Daniel Mercer received the letter on a Tuesday afternoon, folded neatly inside a plain white envelope with no return address, his name typed across the front in plain black ink. He almost tossed it aside with the junk mail, but the weight of it felt deliberate. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small brass key taped to the bottom corner. The note contained only one sentence: "You locked this away in 2009. It's time to open it." Daniel stood in his kitchen staring at the key, a dull pressure forming behind his ribs. 2009 was the year his younger brother Caleb disappeared. Officially listed as a missing adult, 23 years old, last seen leaving Daniel's apartment after an argument. No forced entry, no bank activity, no confirmed sightings, just absence.
The police questioned Daniel twice back then. Routine procedure, they said. Siblings argue. Adults leave, sometimes they start over. Daniel repeated the same explanation to everyone. We fought. He stormed out. That's it. It became a script he learned to deliver without emotion. Weeks after Caleb vanished, Daniel rented a small storage unit across town to hold the boxes Caleb had left behind. Old clothes, notebooks, a guitar. Things that felt wrong to throw away, but impossible to keep in sight.
He told himself it was practical. He had not visited the unit in over a decade. Now he turned the brass key over in his hand, recognizing it instantly. A minute later, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Unit 314. Same place. His pulse slowed instead of racing. Only 2 people had known about that unit, Daniel and the facility manager who processed the paperwork. He typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came immediately. "You know why he left." The words pressed against a memory he had spent years flattening. That night in 2009, the argument had escalated fast. Accusations circling the same unresolved tension. Caleb's voice sharp with something more than anger. Before he walked out, Caleb had said one sentence that lingered long after the door slammed: "You don't get to decide what's true." At the time, Daniel dismissed it as dramatic exaggeration. Now it sounded like a warning. He drove to the storage facility without fully deciding to. The building looked unchanged. Fluorescent lights humming faintly above narrow aisles of metal doors. Unit 314 sat at the end, slightly rusted along the bottom seam. He inserted the key from the envelope. It fit. The lock clicked open with a sound that echoed more than it should have. When he lifted the door, stale air drifted out. The containers were stacked exactly as he left them. Caleb's guitar case leaned against the far wall. A boxed lamp sat on top of a plastic bin. For a moment, Daniel felt foolish. Nothing had changed. Then he saw it. Resting on the nearest container was a small black recorder. Clean, undusted, new. A red light blinked steadily. Recording. He stepped forward slowly and picked it up, noticing a fresh tape inside and a label attached in neat block letters, "Play Me." His phone buzzed again. He told the truth. "You just buried it." The unit suddenly felt narrower, the air heavier. Daniel pressed stop. The red light disappeared. After a brief pause, he pressed play. Static crackled through the tiny speaker, followed by a voice he recognized instantly. His own. From 2009. Saying something he had no memory of ever saying. The recording began with static, then the faint echo of a room Daniel instantly recognized as his old apartment. He could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the background, the uneven rattle of the ceiling fan he had never fixed. Then his voice came through, sharper than he remembered, edged with frustration. "You're twisting this," it said. There was a pause, followed by Caleb's voice, strained but steady. "No, you are." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He had no memory of recording this. The argument unfolded in fragments, words overlapping, tension thick even through the small speaker. Caleb was accusing him of lying to the police about something unrelated at first, a minor incident involving a neighbor's complaint that had somehow escalated into a larger debate about honesty and control. Daniel on the recording sounded defensive, insistent, repeatedly saying, "I handled it. It's done." Caleb's response cut through more clearly. "You didn't handle it. You rewrote it." Daniel pressed the speaker closer to his ear. The memory he carried of that night had always centered on Caleb being unstable, overly dramatic, angry about small things. But in the recording, Caleb's tone was measured, controlled. It was Daniel who sounded volatile. "You think you get to decide what happened," Caleb said on the tape. "You think if you say it confidently enough, it becomes fact." There was a loud thud in the background, something hitting a wall or a table. Daniel flinched involuntarily. He had told the police the argument was verbal only. No physical escalation. The recording suggested otherwise. "Don't walk away from me," Daniel's voice snapped. Footsteps, a door creaking. Caleb again, closer to the microphone now. "I'm not walking away. I'm leaving." A long pause followed, filled with breathing and the faint sound of traffic outside. Then Caleb said something that made Daniel's hand tremble around the recorder. "If anything happens to me, it's because you can't stand losing control." The tape clicked softly, as if someone had shifted it in their hand. Daniel's recorded voice lowered, almost whispering, "Don't threaten me." "It's not a threat," Caleb replied. "It's a pattern." The recording ended abruptly after the sound of a door slamming. Silence filled the storage unit. Daniel stared at the device, mind racing. This was not how he remembered it. In his memory, Caleb stormed out mid-rant, irrational and dramatic. Here, the narrative felt different, structured. Caleb sounded like someone trying to document something. A realization surfaced slowly. The recorder had not been Daniel's. Caleb must have brought it. Caleb must have pressed record. Daniel's phone buzzed again. "Did you remember that part?" He did not respond. His thoughts were shifting in uncomfortable directions. If Caleb recorded the argument, that meant he anticipated escalation. It meant he feared being misrepresented. Daniel had told the police Caleb left angry, but unharmed. He had never mentioned any physical altercation, because he believed there wasn't one. But the thud on the tape, the strain in his own voice, suggested something closer to loss of control than he ever admitted. Another message appeared. "There's more." Daniel looked around the unit instinctively, as if expecting someone to be standing in the shadows between the stacked containers. The space remained still, quiet except for his own breathing. If there was more, it meant this was not just about a fight. It meant someone wanted him to confront a version of that night he had spent 13 years editing in his mind. He looked down at the recorder again, turning it over in his hands, searching for any indication of how it arrived there. No fingerprints visible, no note, just the tape and the blinking truth it carried. His phone vibrated once more. Check the blue box. Bottom shelf. Daniel's gaze shifted slowly toward the far wall where Caleb's belongings were stacked. On the bottom shelf sat a large blue plastic container, sealed exactly as he left it in 2009. Or so he thought. Daniel set the recorder down carefully and walked toward the blue plastic container on the bottom shelf. He was certain he had sealed it himself 13 years ago, taping the edges with deliberate finality, as if containment could simplify grief. Now the tape across the lid looked slightly uneven, newer than the faded adhesive he remembered using. His pulse remained steady, but his thoughts were accelerating. Someone had accessed this unit. Recently. He crouched and ran his thumb along the lid before pulling it open. Inside were Caleb's notebooks, old t-shirts, a framed photo of the two of them from a beach trip years before the disappearance. Beneath those items, however, sat something Daniel knew had not been there originally. A manila folder. Clean, unaged. He lifted it slowly and opened it. Inside were printed call logs, copies of police interview summaries, and a highlighted timeline of the night Caleb vanished. His own statement was circled in red ink. We argued. He left around 10:15 p.m. I didn't follow him. The timeline beneath it showed Caleb's phone signal pinging a tower less than half a mile from Daniel's apartment at 11:02 p.m. Another ping at 11:47 p.m. Same tower. That contradicted Daniel's memory completely. If Caleb left at 10:15, why was his phone still nearby nearly 90 minutes later? Daniel tried to reconstruct the night as he had told it for years. The argument ended. Caleb grabbed his jacket. The door slammed. Silence. But now the recording replayed in his mind. The thud. The tension. Don't walk away from me. A detail he had always dismissed surfaced slowly. After Caleb left, Daniel had gone outside. He told himself it was to cool off. He walked around the block. He may have even circled the building once or twice. At the time, he framed it as giving space. But the pings suggested Caleb had not gone far either. The folder contained one more item. A photograph taken from street level, grainy, but recognizable. It showed the side alley behind Daniel's old apartment building. The timestamp in the corner read 11:18 p.m. Two figures were visible, one standing, one partially obscured against the brick wall. Daniel's breath shortened. Even blurred, he could identify the jacket he had been wearing that night. The second figure was Caleb. The angle made it unclear what was happening, but the proximity was unmistakable. They were face to face. Not separated, not gone. The next page in the folder was blank except for one handwritten sentence, "You didn't just argue." Daniel felt the careful architecture of his memory begin to fracture. He had never told police about going into the alley. He had convinced himself it was insignificant. That they exchanged a few final words. That Caleb walked off afterward. But if there was contact, physical or otherwise, and Caleb disappeared within hours, then omission became something else. His phone vibrated again. Why didn't you mention the alley? The precision of the question told him whoever was orchestrating this knew the details intimately. Not speculation. Documentation. Daniel typed back before he could reconsider. Who are you? The reply came slower this time. I was there. His mind raced through possibilities. A neighbor. A passerby. Someone Caleb had confided in. The phone buzzed again. I saw you push him. The storage unit felt airless. Daniel's immediate reaction was denial. I didn't push him. He stared at the message, then at the photograph again. The blur between the two figures could have been motion, could have been contact. Memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction. Over years, he had reconstructed that night into something manageable, an argument, a door slam, regret. But the tape proved escalation. The timeline proved proximity. The photograph proved confrontation after he claimed it ended. Whether he pushed Caleb hard enough to cause injury, or whether Caleb stumbled in the dark was suddenly less important than one fact, Daniel had not told the whole truth. And somewhere inside him, he knew he never intended to. The phone vibrated one last time. He survived the fall. Daniel read it twice before the meaning settled. Survived. The fall. His breathing slowed into something almost mechanical. If Caleb survived, then the disappearance was not an immediate fatality. It meant there were hours, maybe days, unaccounted for. It meant Daniel's version of events had never been the full story. It meant someone else had carried the rest for 13 years. Another message appeared. He wants you to stop deciding what's true. Daniel looked at the recorder in his hand, then at the open blue box, the photograph, the timeline. For the first time since 2009, he allowed himself to consider a possibility he had buried deeper than the storage unit itself. Caleb might not have vanished because he stormed off. He might have vanished because after the fall, after the alley, after whatever really happened, Daniel chose silence over clarity. And silence, repeated long enough, becomes its own kind of disappearance.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.